Cool. Hello, everyone. I'm Brandon from the Anix. It's a music project that I've started, I guess it was early 2000s. And it's been, I started kind of at the start of the internet, the start of streaming and all that stuff. So it's been one of those weird things where I was releasing music as I was learning how to produce and write music. So there's 80% of my career was all stuff I regret releasing pretty much because it was just showing the learning process. And, 20 years later, I'm just now starting to figure it out. So yeah. That's kind of what it is. So the Anix is basically, it's an art project on all fronts. So graphic design, clothing design, apparel, collaborations, music, videos, photography. I do all of it. So it's just kind of just one person's singular vision of being a musician. So, yeah.
Wow. So you do like literally everything from writing to production, mixing, mastering. Do you like album artwork and video production too?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You do your own videos? Oh, snap.
Yeah. So
they're really good, by the way. Your videos are awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a tricky one when I'm trying to film myself because you can only do so much. Yeah. So I've in the past set up pretty bizarre rigs where I can control camera movement using a foot or pulley system or wheels or whatever it is. But I tried just to be as self-sufficient as possible, not rely on anyone. So
yeah, that's awesome. A lot of artists that I've talked to, once they hit a certain point, they they talk about what they're going to outsource and what they're going to do themselves. And I've always been the type of person who there's some things I don't like doing, of course, but I like the idea that I've done everything for my music, like the artwork, the videos, even if the videos are way worse than they could be if I just hired someone. Like, it makes me kind of proud that I did them myself, even though they're worse because of that.
Definitely.
So that's really cool to see you've kind of like maintained that element of control over like a 20-year career.
Yeah, it's always been, I've worked with big labels. I've been hired on as a musician for other artists. So I've seen the workings of, like Sony and, whatever big major label there is. And I always just found it weird that you can be an artist that gets signed and you have a team that's showing the world how you look or dictating your artwork, your merchandise, even like your lyrics, the songwriting. So at the end of the day, that person that's signed is really, you're not really seeing who they truly are. You're seeing what a team of people is, but not really what that singular person was. So that's something I've always tried to stay true to, as painful as it is and as much work as it is to try to do as much as I can on my own, just so, my fans are really seeing, they're hearing a song, then they're seeing merchandise, so they're seeing, pictures and graphics that all fits into the same universe. It all is coherent and the same.
Yeah, I think you're a really good example of someone who's got their branding like really on point. A lot of people get confused when they hear the words, like establish your brand or whatever. Since most of the stuff on this channel we're talking about music business, music industry, music marketing, a lot of artists they'll ask me like, how do I figure out my brand? And like, I'm not necessarily even that great at that, but like you're a fantastic example of it, because when I think of just the Anix, I think of the kind of like Blade Runner kind of vibes, like futuristic kind of city, but also like synthesizers and like the somewhat like, I guess, emo goth look you have. I don't know if that's a good way to describe it, but like the like black clothes and the neon lights and stuff. Like it just feels very all put together. So like, how'd you figure that out? Was it more natural or more like something you actually sat down?
I've always really been into just researching brands I like and the whole universe that resides around that brand. So any musician that's out there wondering how do I develop a brand, you can look at Apple, you can look at Nike, any big brand, and you can steal a lot of ideas from those guys. Brands typically have color, they have a feel to all their images, the way that you write the copy of all their posts, all that feels the same. You just kind of know what to expect when, like, if Apple were to do a post or Nike. And I think that should apply to musicians as well. Some of it feels redundant when you're doing the same thing over and over. And I know a lot of musicians that I know that I work with, they try to always change things and redevelop and, but at the end of the day, you're just one little blip in everyone's feed. So as much as that seems redundant to you, you're just one of 20,000 posts that person's going to see a day. So you can be as redundant as you want, and it's not going to feel that way to the people looking in.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Even if you posted like every single day on all social media, like most people are going to see you once just because of the way those services work, and they're probably not going to get bored of it. Even though like when you're doing all this content, like, if you have to like dress up, so to speak, or like, make yourself look the part or like brand everything a certain way, you probably get sick of it. I mean, I know for my YouTube videos, like, to you right now, my camera looks all muted, but on the stream, I got like a color rate on it, and all the lights are all blue and orange, and you got an orange shirt on, and that's like for my YouTube channel, it's like there's a certain like look to it, and it gets kind of, in a way, to me, it's just this obvious thing. Like, even though it's just a few logos and some color schemes, and the way I open up videos, and I do it all the time, but as someone who watches, even if they watch every video, a 10-minute video might have taken a couple hours to make, so they're only seeing this tiny little fraction in between like hours and hours of other content they watched that day.
Absolutely. Yeah, man, that's spot on. That's what I would do too.
Yeah. So Offline said, need to up my videography skills, but self-sufficient is the name of the game, man. Which I feel like over time, I feel like artists have been able to do it more. Like when back in the day, you've been on a few labels, right?
Mm-hmm.
How much, let's say after the first label you got signed to, like how much became them kind of like getting involved, and how much did they kind of take away from you doing everything?
The first like big substantial record deal I signed around 2008, that was kind of what you would imagine a major deal to be like, where they sign you a producer. They took my demos, which are what got me signed in the first place, rewrote my lyrics, because the producer had this like degree from some huge music school. So that, I guess, made them feel that he was better than I was. So rewrote the lyrics, and kind of redefined the tone of the songs into more of a rock genre, and stripped away a lot of the electronic stuff, which made it unique to begin with.
Right.
And then they had their own graphic design department that did all the album art, which was pretty good. And then as far as the video, they set us up with a director that did a video, which was also pretty good. But again, just what I was saying earlier, it was largely someone else's vision. Like I wasn't in control over it. And a lot of the fans that were following me up to that point, they saw right through it. They knew that I didn't write those lyrics. They knew I didn't produce the songs. They knew I didn't direct the video.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a changing point for me. I think it was around a few years after that, the iPhone released the first phone with an HD camera on it, which I think it was like a 720p camera. But at the time, that was like groundbreaking.
Yeah.
So I bought one of those the day it came out, and that same day, stripped out my apartment and filmed the music video in there with the full band. And we just shot it ourselves on the iPhone, edited it the same night, turned it out. And then the next day it kind of went viral. Like Apple reposted it.
Wow.
Gizmodo, all these tech sites, because it was really the first music video done that way. And that was what everyone was showing is, you don't need a huge crew, 30 person, film crew on a set. This is done with one person and an iPhone.
Yeah.
That kind of just changed my perspective on things. And the way things are now in present time, streaming's everything. And I'm sure you know how little it pays. So when I'm releasing singles, I'm thinking, how can I do as much of this, create as much assets as I can on my own, so I eat the expense. I'm just doing it myself rather than outsourcing. Because if I have to outsource, $500 for album artwork and $5,000 for a video. I mean, that's millions of streams that song has to get just to recoup that.
Right.
So that's always in the back of my mind.
Yeah. So you went to the streaming thing, which is, obviously everyone's always talking about Spotify, at least on this channel. But most artists I talk to, like one person I work with, he gets, I think, like 1.5 million streams a month on Spotify. Is that right? So yeah, something like that, or maybe like 2 million a month. And so for them, like, streaming is a huge part of their income from their band. Like, when it's not COVID, they do touring, but it is, so they don't. I mean, I think they might be getting back to it, but for the last year and a half, they didn't have it. So streaming was basically their jam. Is streaming like your whole world, or do you get a good amount of like downloads, physical sales, merch sales? Like, how much of your business is Spotify?
It's a big chunk. All streaming platforms, like at least the big ones, like Spotify, Apple, and Yandex, have a big Russian fan base.
Okay.
Those combined, I'm close to the 1.5 to 2 million streams a month. So that does make a substantial contribution to what I make.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other elements in the ecosystem of things that I make that make me money. So merchandise, that's a whole nother strategy that I've kind of developed from my obsession, as you can probably see in the back, with sneakers, shoes. Just, I've been a big time sneakerhead since, the 80s, basically. So I've just watched how those releases, how, Nike does these shoe releases.
Yeah.
And I've kind of adapted that model into my merchandise. So everything's limited, timed. I know a strategy leading up to the release, how to get people excited. So yeah, merchandise is a big part of it. And then I do a lot of production on the side. I do video work on the side, remixes. And then there's collaborations too that I do that are not just like music merchandise, but stuff where we'll take the visual identity of, really what the Anix is, like the Blade Runner stuff you were talking about earlier, the neon, all that, and apply that to different items. And then that's another revenue source. So.
Right. So have you done your own shoe launch?
No, I wish. The problem is that I'm pretty dedicated to I only like Nike, Vans, and Converse.
Okay.
And to land one of those deals, you have to be like a Travis Scott or, someone.
Kanye West or something.
Yeah, someone billions of years in another, place than I am. So I'm just happy being a fan of the shoes. So.
Yeah. So when you sell your merch, what is the marketing process behind, hyping it up and getting people to actually grab it? Like, is it all organic now that you've built up this audience over the past 20-ish years or so, it sounds like? Or is there like ad strategy behind it? Is there just organic content production, or do you have like a giant email list? Like, what's the biggest mover of your products?
We've never done ads for any of my merchandise, and usually the newsletter from Fix, the label I'm signed to, that usually goes out after the stuff's already sold out. So it's really just organic traffic from Instagram. That's kind of the main driver of all of it is all on Instagram. So let's say I'm going to release something on Friday. Starting Monday of that week, I'll start with just giving small bits of information out about what's coming. Mm-hmm. And you have to understand, this is also 3 years of repeating this process. So the fans know what to expect. They know that on Friday when it comes out, they have to be on the website exactly at 9 a.m. ready to buy. And then usually the stuff sells out sometimes in an hour, sometimes by midday, and sometimes it doesn't. You never really know. And when we started it, the whole point was, again, trying to be as efficient as possible. I didn't want to carry huge inventory. I didn't want to order more, items than I knew I could sell. And it was trying to figure out what that sweet spot was. So sometimes we would, after the launch, we'd be like, damn, we could have made another 50 of those. Or sometimes it was, we should have made 30 less of those. So it's just been trying to ride that line and knowing when to pull the product. Like if it's not selling, just kill it. Don't leave it up forever. And if you go to the Fix web store, you don't really see any of my merch there because usually it's there for a day and then we blow through it and then it's gone. So I get messages a lot asking, when's your next shirt going to come out? When are you going to have stuff for sale? And it's just all part of the learning process. The fans that know, they know how to get it. They know the game to play, and that's really what it is.
Wow.
But I do put a lot of work into making the assets for it. So I see a lot of bands when they're doing a shirt, they'll just use mock-ups of the shirt, just digital blanks, and they'll put the logo on it or the graphic, and that's really all they'll use. Some of my stuff I'll do like full videos, like commercials for it, basically.
Yeah.
I'll do multiple photo sets, graphic stuff, as much as I can, different formats for stories. So I really try to hit every angle to show the merchandise within the universe I've created as far as the brand look and identity.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take a picture of her shirt on a wooden table. That's not sell the shirt. Yeah. So I'll get the shirt. I'll go down to downtown LA, find some shady looking place to take photos at night. And then it just all has to look like it's from the same place.
Yeah. I noticed for the modular guitar straps you did, you actually like wrote a song that was like the name of the product or the company that you were collabing with. And like, which was, I saw that and I was like, I saw in your thing the promo video. There was like a teaser and then a promo video and then like a released video. And then there was a song lyric video. I was like, what the fuck is this?
That was an incredible amount of work that went into that. Yeah. Dispatch, that was the company I collaborated with on that. They're this incredible like camera accessory company out of San Francisco. Yeah. They make really cool like camera bags and straps and like commuter accessories for cyclists and a lot of technical gear like that. It's super good quality. It's all made in the US. So for the straps, I've been wanting to do a guitar strap for a while. I have a Fender artist deal, so I was originally looking at doing something with them. But I wanted to do something really different and kind of breaking the molds because guitar straps really haven't changed in such a, I don't think ever really. For the most part. So I wanted to do something that captured all the stuff I like. I like super high tech, electronics. I like cool different materials. I like military grade materials. I like, crazy sneakers. So it was taking all that stuff and making a guitar strap into it. Yeah. And for that, so we had the product. I did a launch video for it. I did kind of a PR video for it. I wrote the music for all that stuff, and that's kind of how I have that music video for it, just using stuff I already filmed for it for the strap. Yeah. I did multiple photo sets, and, we did a press release. We did all kinds of stuff. So, and that was basically me creating all those assets.
Damn, man. Yeah. Okay. Everyone watching this, we got to up our game because if Brandon here is putting all that work into selling his merch and we're just coming out here with mock-ups from like Printful or something, like who the hell's going to buy our stuff when they see your stuff? Like
it might work for, everyone has a different scenario. For me, this is just what I found work. So I'm afraid to not do it this way. Yeah. Just because it's taken so long to get to this point where I've found, an avenue that does work. I'm trying not to.
It makes a lot of sense because like, if you're almost putting, or it sounds like you're putting just as much work into the merch and the branding behind the merch, the videography, photography behind the merch as your actual music, which if you think of a clothing company, they're gonna do that because that's literally their whole business.
Absolutely.
So the fact that you treat it like 100% as seriously as if it was the only aspect of your business, it's sure. I can see why that would work, and it really shows when you go on like your Instagram or YouTube channel, you see all these videos, you're just like, I didn't think there was any chance at all that you did all of it. just because it was so much. It would have been so much work to do it all, but you're doing it all, which is awesome. It's impressive.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't know how sustainable it is that I keep doing it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, dude, it is really exhausting, and it's a miracle that I still have motivation to keep doing it and keep, as soon as that merch run is done, it's right back to writing the next single.
Yeah.
As soon as that single is done, it's creating the artwork, creating photos, maybe doing a video for it, then doing merch that's also timed up with the release of that single. That's another thing I try to do is whenever I release merchandise, it's generally on this, I'll put it out the same day as whatever single I have coming out. Yeah. That way it has an extra boost of enthusiasm. Fans are excited they're hearing a new song, new shirts coming out. Also releasing stuff on a Friday I found is better because people get paid on Fridays.
Right.
People are in a better mood on Fridays, last day of the week. So yeah, a lot of it's just kind of common sense. If you just analyze yourself, the things that make you happy when you're happiest out of the week, when you're more likely to buy something, it just applied to your own stuff.
Yeah, totally. I noticed the same thing. I have like a sample pack business, and I also sell like courses and stuff. And it'll be crazy that usually at least Sunday is the worst day. The best days are usually Wednesdays and Thursdays for whatever reason. So like, every day when I get a sale, I get emails whenever I get sales. So I'll be like, I'll have a really good day and I'll be like, oh, I'm going to go buy something online because I just made a bunch of money. And then like the weekend comes and you're just like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have spent all that money.
Yeah.
I think it's like every industry has their own quirks of when people are doing stuff. And for me, it might just be like YouTube decided to push one of my videos out or a certain day of the week, one of my like Facebook ad campaigns is like happens to be doing better in the auction. But you're right. Like it makes sense that assuming it fits your audience and who you're targeting, that like people get paid on either Fridays or Thursdays. And so the end of the week is normally like fun time.
Yeah.
I'm going to go buy a shirt. I'm going to go buy a guitar strap. I'm going to go stream some music. And it's probably why Spotify does the music releases on Friday. Like I think before it used to be Tuesdays was the standard, right? And then Spotify kind of changed it to Fridays.
Yeah.
Which is why I've always released music on Fridays myself. Yeah. So you release a lot of music.
Yeah.
Which I forget. I'm just gonna open your Spotify. You released an album this year already, but I saw something on your site that like you're teasing like another album for this year. Is that right?
No, so it's generally one album per year.
Okay.
Starting in, I think it's 2018 is when I got on this rhythm.
Yeah.
What I've done this year is just release singles, which by around October, these will all be compiled onto the rest of this new album that's coming out called Revenge.
Yeah.
But what we found is, it's pretty alarming. We were looking at artists that put out 2 singles and then didn't release an album with like 8 songs on it. So basically those 8 songs weren't released as a single. They were just released on the album.
Yeah.
And the performance of the songs that weren't released as singles on Spotify was, like 1/16 of the songs that were singles. And you can analyze a lot of different artists and find similar results to this.
Yeah.
So as much as it sucks to give away all your songs as singles, and then, at the end of the year, you release the album and maybe there's one new song that no one's heard yet, that sucks because I grew up buying albums where the whole thing was a surprise. Maybe you'd hear the one song on the radio and then the other 9 songs were all brand new. And I love that.
Yeah.
But in the age we're in now, if you actually want your songs to get heard and you want the numbers to be up and you want the whole album to perform and, pass 1 million streams as the whole album together,
right,
you just have to release everything as singles or as many as you possibly can. So my goal is always, I at least have to have 10 songs on an album. And, last year and the year before, I was saying, okay, we'll do 7 songs as singles, and then the last 3 will be the surprise on the album.
Yeah.
But now it's like I'm going to release 9 singles, and the 10th one will be when the album comes out, just because that's the only way to get get anything out of it, really.
That's the exact same thing that I've seen for like everyone I've talked to. They all say the same thing. It's kind of sucks. You're right, because like I kind of forgot about it. Do you listen to Tool, by the way?
Yeah.
I completely forgot about the magic of an album that hasn't been like singlified. When Tool, they dropped like one single for their new album, and then they just dropped the whole album like a month later. And it was just, the whole thing was a surprise. And I listened to it from start to finish. And that magic's completely gone. And a lot of people ask me on my channel, especially if they're not like, I think rappers and pop artists get it, and EDM people get it. Like the world is all singles. But a lot of rock artists will comment like, hey, I really don't want to release every song in my album as singles. I just want to like drop an album. And I'm just like, if you just drop your album, you're kind of just throwing all those songs away, unfortunately. Especially if it's like your first release. Like, don't make your first release an album and then not release a damn thing for 2 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Trickle it out, one a month for a year, and then write new music while you wait for that. And it's cool to hear.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to doing the single route. One of them is, I believe you can only pitch. Like, let's say you're releasing a full album. You've never released a single, just a full album. You can only pitch one of those songs to Spotify's editorial playlist.
Yeah.
So that means you get one chance out of your 10 to 15 songs on your album to land a playlist. Versus releasing singles, you get every single gets its own chance to land an editorial playlist.
Yeah.
Also, when you're releasing a song a month, like I do, that keeps like people engaged. Every month they're coming back to you. They're constantly seeing you in their release section. Keeps them motivated and excited to buy merchandise all the time. Versus the old method where you go into a studio for 4 months and you're silent. Then you come out with this album, you put it out, and then you go tour to support it. You don't have a lot of engagement in between. You engage people on the road, on tour. But the model that I'm on, just releasing stuff every month, but accompanying the release with all these other things for people to get engaged with, that's kind of, I've been able to bypass the touring model and do it this way. And I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, that it is a sustainable, or it is something that could work.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been trying to do that too. And I mean, I'm like 8 times smaller than you on Spotify or something, but it seems to totally still work. And I've worked with artists who are starting from zero, and they do what you're doing to get from zero to like, to 10,000 to 20,000 to 50,000 to 100,000 monthly listeners. And whereas other people just kind of, they don't want to do it, and they refuse to follow the model because they hate how like what it does to the music experience. They want to be this mysterious, like, like again, Tool, I guess, is a good example. They're all these like mysterious guys who hide from the limelight and don't post any content and drop an album once every, what was it, 12 years? The album before that was, and still, but like they're an exception. If Tool was a brand new band, they would be doing. I mean, maybe because they're freaking amazing, they'd still do very well. But you can't look at someone like Kanye West and copy him necessarily, because you're not at that level. Which this whole single strategy seems to be like the best way to do it, because you get way more pitching opportunities. The algorithmic playlists seem to like that schedule, and it's the same on YouTube. It's the same on Instagram. If you don't post on YouTube for 2 months, your numbers are going to go down. Same on Spotify. Yeah.
And it's definitely a challenge. It's not easy to keep posting. I'm someone personally that absolutely hates posting photos of myself, videos, doing anything that where I have to like be on camera. I hate the whole thing. I'm much more behind the scenes type of thing. So that's been the struggle for me, is trying to get the motivation to do the stuff that I know is needed to make this business work.
Yeah. So the social media content's a lot more exhausting than I think some people realize before they get into it. Like, some people, like, I've heard the ideal Instagram strategy that a lot of the influencer people will use is they'll post 5 stories a day. They'll post 3 to 5 Instagram reels a day and 1 feed post per day. And
Jesus.
like as artists, that's what we're competing against. Like that's what's crowding the feed. And that's how, like you have to stand out from that. And like most artists aren't doing that because we have way more to do than just be Instagram famous. You actually have to like make stuff, but you know, you kind of have to adapt some of that stuff. You're doing pretty. I don't know where my phone is, but you got a good following on your Instagram, and as you mentioned before, Instagram like drives a lot of your merch sales. So I mean, how did
it's only a fraction of like the followers I have on Spotify or like even some of the Russian streaming platforms, but it's pretty amazing that even with, you know, like I think I have like 13,000 people on Instagram, even with that small of a number, you know, that's driving it pretty much all the merch business. And it's a good chunk. So
because your Spotify is like 30,000 people, but the thing with Spotify is you can't like message them.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. So I think even if you have a smaller number, if it's a smaller number but they're super engaged and you interact with each comment, you reply to every DM. I try to reply to absolutely everyone. I'll even do collaborations with people that have, you know, 2 followers. They don't even have a Spotify page set up. If they send me a song and I think it's cool and it's something I'm not doing on my own, you know, I'm usually open for it if I have the time. So nice. I actually have a release coming out in like a day or so with this kid from Russia that he's like doing this, like, I guess it's kind of like trap or like hip hop stuff. And he wanted me to do the hook, the vocal hook. It was like, I liked the song. I thought it was cool. And he was just starting out. So I'll do stuff like that and also do collaborations with people that are on major labels and, you know, the full big thing. So to me, it doesn't matter. If it's something cool, you know, I'm open.
That's that. I mean, I think that's the best way to do it. Cause like a lot of artists have that kind of clout thing where they're like, I don't want to work with someone smaller than me because it makes me look bad or whatever, but it's just so stupid. I mean,
the egos are insane in this industry. Yeah, that's one thing I really try to be aware of is I try to have no ego. I think that's really what's pushed me to become a better writer is because I've just always thought everything I did was horrible and like unlistenable. So I'm just blown away that anyone listens to it to begin with. But that's always kept me on this quest to like, okay, here, I have another chance. Hopefully this time I'll get it right. And then sure enough, I release it. Nope, didn't get it right. So it's back to the drawing board. And I keep chasing that desire just to finally write a song that I like. Yeah. And I think I see a lot of artists that they get these huge egos and they think everything they do is incredible, the best ever, and they don't really expand or go anywhere from that.
Totally. I've had people message me and tell me how great their song is and why I should add it to a playlist. Because like the way I first heard about you was you or someone at your label. Is it Fixed? Is that what your label is called? Either you or someone at your label was submitting to me on Submit Hub. And so on Submit Hub as a curator, I get a lot of artists being like, I just released the most fire track ever. Check it out, add it to your playlist. And they're like bragging about it. Whereas like, I don't, again, I don't know if it was you or someone at the label. When they sent me the song, it was like more of like describing the story behind the release and the how the song felt. Yeah. And then it's usually when artists I talk to, usually the ones who are the most confident that their song is amazing have in my opinion at least, the worst quality compared to the artists who tell me that their music sucks, or they're like, they're not happy with it, like, because I feel like that drive of thinking that your stuff's not good is probably what makes your music better, Yeah,
I for sure believe that. And I guess there's a fine line to walk. Like if I was to submit a song to like a PR channel, I wouldn't just start the message out saying, here's my song, it's the worst thing I've ever done, but give it a shot. I think you just have to find a humble approach. Yeah. Because nobody likes a douchebag that's, high on himself or thinks he's the greatest.
Right.
And if someone were to approach me that way on like for a remix or a collaboration, hell no, there's no way I'm going to work with somebody like that.
Yeah. I feel the same. If someone was like that, even if they were like paying me good or whatever, or even if I liked the song, I'd probably just say, no, I don't want to work with you personally.
Yeah. There's just like basic etiquette that a lot of people lack. Like when they're writing messages, I'll get DMs sometimes from really entitled like younger kids that want me to hear their song, and it's like if I don't respond within a few minutes, I start getting these like hateful messages. Like I'm like, dude, I'm supposed to just see your message, drop everything I'm doing, go listen to your song, and give you feedback all within like a 5-minute period. And that happens a lot, actually. It's crazy. So just basic etiquette. There's a lot of ego involved. There's a lot of being afraid to ask questions. And you just kind of feel like you're on your own doing something for a big company. And there's no real connection with that company. It didn't feel like you're on a team, really.
Right.
It was just like you're supplying a product, and it's once you give them that product, it's out of your control. And you just kind of hope for the best. But it never really felt like it was my product. So that's been something really cool with Fix, the label I'm on now, is that it's, we text every day, me and the label manager. It's just kind of like we're all business partners, and that's really what it should be. If they're taking 50% of everything I make, I want that kind of relationship and that kind of help where I need it. And the help that I need is basically all the back end kind of all the boring stuff, submitting songs, PR, pitching, all that kind of thing. Basically, I just want to be able to just write and design, and that's it. And the label kind of picks up the rest from there.
Yeah, so all the marketing stuff, it's basically like you just saw that and you just did a big fat nope on it. And that's where the label takes over. Well, that's cool. So for, you said it was like, labels taking like 50%, which I've heard is very standard nowadays for those types of labels, I guess more indie-ish labels. I've heard a lot of people do that. When you were on the majors, what was the percentages like, and what was the upfront? I mean, you might even not be able to talk about it or not want to, but
in other situations, it was labels were taking a larger percentage of certain areas, but they wouldn't touch like merchandise. So for like touring, I would own all the merchandise royalty. In my current situation, I'm not set up to tour, at least not right now. So all the merchandise we do is sold through Fixed. They warehouse it all, inventory it, and ship it. Yeah. So obviously they're entitled to a portion of that.
Yeah.
And then with other labels in the past, I would take an advance up front, which I would spend on like music equipment or studio, whatever it is. And then you would just spend the year trying to recoup that, or 2 years trying to recoup it. Then I realized that, any money that's advanced to you is just a loan. You can just go to the bank. Like if you just want money, just go get a loan from the bank. It's the same thing, and hire a publicist. Right. Or hire a publicist and hire somebody to do your distribution. That's really, if you're looking for money, you can just do that.
Yeah.
Because when I came into Fixed, I turned down an advance because I didn't need it. I just can do everything on my own, starting from scratch, from zero. And then I just wanted to be profitable from song one. And that's kind of the approach I took, is trying to minimize any debt that's accrued through being on Fixed. And that mentality started everything as far as trying to do as much as I can on my own.
Yeah.
And, doing it on your own shouldn't be a sacrifice to the quality. So if you can't do some of this stuff on your own, if you're not a graphic designer or clothing designer or whatever, or great with video, maybe you shouldn't do it on your own. You should find somebody to kind of be on a team with you, because I do think the quality still matters.
Yeah.
So that's a delicate line to walk, I think. Just knowing when to give up control and to get someone in there that knows what they're doing. Right. I started graphic designing when I was like in the mid 90s. and started with cameras, photography, and video around the same time. So that whole world is kind of just something that I'm fairly comfortable with, and that's why I do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I probably do more than I should, but I have that kind of control problem, I guess.
Yeah.
But you're right. You know, there's a point where like you should just get someone else to do it, especially, you know, if you consider the value of your time and learning something like Adobe Premiere. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I already use it extensively just because YouTube. But if some artist is doing it from scratch, they're going to spend like a couple weeks just trying to figure out how to edit a video, never mind filming a video, what camera to use, what lens to use, how to light a scene.
But I will say, now more than ever, there's a tutorial for absolutely everything.
Right.
So if you want to learn how to do video, if you dedicate like a month just devouring YouTube content, you can learn how to do a video on an iPhone. That's all you need, really. And that was not the case when I started. When I started, the internet was just starting, and you had to figure out everything on your own, just from trial and error and failure. So that's one thing I didn't have the advantage of is, you know, I wasted a lot of time trying to figure things out on my own.
Yeah. So you mentioned the idea of advances just being essentially loans, which I guess that's something I knew, but just kind of thinking about it after hearing you say it, like if a big artist gets, you know, and I'm talking like a bigger artist, I'm doubting you got like $1 million advance or something, no. But you hear about some artists getting signed and they'll get these crazy advances. They're essentially like they were given a loan for that.
Absolutely.
And they have to pay all that back. So I'm guessing it's different for every contract, but I'm guessing the way it works is like for a certain period of time after they're signed, like a certain higher percentage of proceeds from all all items like merch and record sales and streaming would just go to the label. So like maybe if the artist was originally supposed to get X%, before they pay off their loan, the label's only giving them X minus Y% or something. Is that how it works, or?
Yeah. So, yeah, in general, it would be you get this money up front to live on to sustain maybe 1 year of life. And during that year, everything you release, every single, every album sale, anything you do on tour, sometimes there's a different touring contract, but in general, all income coming in your way first goes back to paying the advance back. And once that advance hits zero and you pay it off, then you can start getting your royalty checks and income after that.
And that's how bands like 30 Seconds to Mars get stuck with these crazy lawsuits. I don't know if you heard about that. Yeah, I watched a documentary on that. It's unbelievable. But I mean, if you're given $500,000 up front, you know, a lot of what makes an artist successful is huge advertising budgets, taking out billboards and doing massive videos with a huge campaign behind it. So that, you know, even though it is just a loan, it's giving you access to do a lot of the stuff that, like, you know, Ariana Grande would do or something like that. So yeah,
it is necessary. If you don't have that money, you can't expect to get to that level unless you really strike luck and something viral happens. But yeah.
So what is part of the advance kind of spent by the label then? Because I'm guessing they're not giving the artist the money and expecting them to know like which marketing agency to hire, which PR firm to hire. Like I'm guessing some of that advance is being spent by the label then, right?
Yeah, I mean, it could be different scenarios. In my personal experiences, I was given the advance that was mine to do whatever I want with. And then outside of that, the label was racking up bills in marketing, PR, advertising, a music video that would get added on to my tab, basically.
Yeah.
So just a running tab. Because that is what a label is there to offer, aside from the money, is they come with this team, and they're basically like a producer, like a movie producer. Well, they'll give you access to, okay, for photo shoots, this is who we use. For videos, here's our roster of directors. For touring, let's, you know, talk to these tour managers and agencies. So they give you the access that way.
Okay.
But ultimately, you're getting billed for all of it.
Right. It's nuts. So when you were at some of the other labels, I'm sure now since you have so much built up, it's different. But back then, when you were getting more started, did you ever see what the labels were doing to promote your music? Like, was it mostly just PR, or were they like pushing your stuff to radio promoters, or what was it?
Yeah, in some of the cases, I was playing for this one artist that had a few songs on a couple Marvel movies.
Wow.
And the promotion for that, for the single that was on the movie, it was a radio promo tour where we just traveled around the U.S., going to different radio stations, playing the song live on the air, like with an acoustic guitar. And then we would also hit festivals in between. So that was the big promo for that.
Yeah.
Previous label I was on for the Anix, we did like a comic book promo thing. I had a song that was on a DC Comics video game. It was also had a TV commercial going with it.
Yeah.
And that's like a licensing publishing thing that turned into promotion for me.
Right.
So that was just a rare time where it was a major video game on major TV for the commercial. And then to kind of milk that as far as possible, we did like a contest with Fender guitars where we gave away a guitar that was wrapped in like DC Comics stuff. And then we sent out USB drives to like comic book stores with the album on it before it was out. So people rolling into, comic book stores could ask, oh, do you have this? We'd give them like a code word and they would ask for it at the counter and they'd get this USB drive.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I think PR was more important back a few years ago, 10 years ago or so. Like when I had an article that was written about me in, I can't remember if it was Billboard or Rolling Stone, just like a review of the album.
Right.
And that was like a big deal. That's like good ammunition for like booking tours to show like these press clippings. But now it's like, I don't know how much value really it gets. With the guitar strap I just did, that had major press coverage, like on Hypebeast and all these huge sites. And I know that helped generate sales. But as far as music press, I can't remember the last time I was really looking for press articles to find new music. Usually I find out about it through Spotify or through friends or, yeah.
Yeah, same. I mean, for me, most of the new music I find is through friends or Spotify recommending me something. And I talked to like a few different like larger artists, and they said like back in the day, for them at least, like PR was very important and reviews on sites or whatever really important. And then at some point they said it transitioned to Facebook page likes, and that was like the number one thing that would get you booked at a venue or might get you headlining versus whatever. And so he said like he got denied like headlining something, and even though he was like definitely the draw artist for the show, and then he found out later it was because they were just going by Facebook page likes. And this was like years ago when that actually mattered. And he said at some point it transitioned to a combination of like Instagram followers and Spotify monthly listeners. And it's kind of silly in a way, but I mean, I guess if you put yourselves in the shoes of that, like the promoter or whatever, like they don't know who the hell you are, and they don't see all the DMs and the merch sales. They look at like a few public numbers, and that's all they have to go for like whether they book you or not.
I think one of the most important things any musician could learn, like if you're going to study something, it'd be marketing, just so you have the ability to see yourself through the lens of these other people you're trying to work with, like booking agents, venues, other press, blogs, and all that stuff. Basically, everyone wants to know what's in it for them and how are they going to get more eyeballs on their brand or whatever they have. And it's just all marketing. Everything is marketing. That's the bottom line. It's just everything is marketing. Yeah,
that's true. Have you ever used Facebook ads?
Personally, no. I think Fix has ran some.
Yeah.
Like when my actual album's out, they'll do some ads at that point. But I've never had any ad experience that was massively beneficial that I got excited about it and thought, okay, I need to do more of this.
Yeah.
Nothing's like been a slam dunk for me yet as far as ads go.
Right. So the fixed a sum for the album.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea like what they do for it, or do you just kind of know they do it?
Yeah, that's one topic I haven't dove into enough to understand completely. So I don't really know how successful they are. My evaluation of success is seeing new people, new page likes, new people DMing me, and that seems to be constant. But it's the majority of that's just organic. Just I guess they find me through Spotify or that route.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I mean, you might have noticed that on my channel, I talk a lot about using Facebook ads for artists to promote their music. But
I need to take some lessons from you.
Yeah,
rewatch those.
It's like there's totally other ways to do it. Especially you came from an era that stuff didn't exist. You got started before Facebook existed, and definitely Facebook ads existed, and it's like it's changed over the years. But if you were to do it all again today, you would go back to like 18-year-old Brandon in 2021, just making music for fun. Like, what would your plan of attack be? Kind of like seeing the industry now and knowing how things went. Like, what would be your first move to like build yourself up from nothing?
Probably getting a marketing degree or taking as many courses online and reading as many books as I can on marketing and branding, those two elements. Because really to start out, I mean, there's billions, I'm sure, of artists out there. And everyone is really using the same tools to make a very similar product. Something you listen to on speakers, has a drum beat, has a bass line, and a vocal. So it's like you really have to get creative on dreaming up ways to stand out and to make something unique that no one else is doing. Car brands, for example, automotive, they look at even things down to the colors that are associated with each brand. Like Ferrari is red. Porsche is like this red and gold from the badge. BMW is blue. And so when they're developing a brand identity, they're looking at the color wheel and what color can we have that's uniquely ours to stand out? They're looking for any little thing they can just to have something unique. And that's really difficult for an artist, especially starting out. So I think, if I were just starting out, those two categories I would really try to master. And I wouldn't focus so much on the production of the music. I would just focus on the vibe and creating something that has a unique attitude towards it. A lot of the music I like, I don't care about the production on it. I care really about like the chorus. Is it a chorus that I like? That's really what a song for me comes down to, is the chorus. 9 Inch Nails, band I love. A lot of their songs to me sound horrible production-wise, like almost unlistenable. And then the chorus comes around and it kind of brings it all together. And that's what keeps me coming back, is a good chorus.
Yeah.
And that'd be my advice, is that.
Cool. That's one question I always ask people when they've had like a longer career in music, because it's always cool to hear like what people say. Again, I'm sure you can imagine like everyone's a little bit different with that kind of answer, but that was a good one.
What would you do if you were just starting?
I probably, considering that I only started I've been making music for 17 years or something, but I just started promoting it in 2019. So since it's that recent, I'd be basically do the same thing that I've been doing. But I mean, I feel like you're kind of at the point where obviously like you're still trying to grow and develop your brand and push the boundaries. But like, I feel like you've kind of pushed through a certain level where you have a pretty solid fan base that looks like they engage with you and they come back again and again. I'm still trying to push through that. I feel like I'm the Spotify front. I'm like kind of growing, over time, but now I'm trying to focus on a lot of the things you mentioned are important, like the engagements and the DMs, and I'm trying to build up that email list and try to get into the whole merch side of things too, because it's just different. The experience on Spotify, it's much different from what you have. Just getting streams on Spotify is different from getting all these DMs and having people come back for all these unique merch launches and So for me, it'd be the same thing, but I feel like I'm still kind of in the thick of it.
Yeah. Another thing that's helped me throughout this like path is I'm sure every musician's experienced the same thing, where other people are defining what being successful is for you. So everyone's, I would go to like family gatherings or at work, working a normal job, and everyone's like, so what's going on with the band? And you try to explain it to them. And for those people, if they don't hear you're on MTV or you're not making like $1 million a year, they think you're a failure. Yeah. Like for the majority of people looking in, they think being a musician means either like Kanye West level or you're a failure. They don't understand that there's this middle territory. And if you just have to be, at one with yourself to be okay with wherever you end up landing in that realm. And once I understood I'm never going to be Kanye West or in that territory, the music I make is it's more of this underground thing. It's never going to have this mass audience. But that doesn't mean that it's a failure. And I can still make money on this. I can still, the reward for me is that people listen to it. Another byproduct of that is that I make streaming sales and whatever else. But really what I came to terms with is that I like making music. And what I like even more is when I know that people are listening to it. That's kind of like the most important thing. Nothing's worse than when you spend all this time on a song, you put it out and no one listens to it. You want people to hear it. Yeah. So that's, at some point a few years ago, that became the goal, is I just want to put music out and have people listen to it and like it or hate it. And then following that path, streaming started going up and everything started coming together. But it's a hard thing when everyone around you is trying to, making you feel like shit and you're a failure, and it's hard to keep pushing through that and going forward. So you just have to define what your own success is. Like for you, what do you want to be successful? And just, you need a reality check sometimes, but yeah.
It's great advice. It's really, really great advice. I've had people comment on videos where they'll say like, name like one example of an artist who has become successful with Facebook ads. And I'll like name some. I'll name some, and they'll, there's this rapper I had on for an interview. He had like 200,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, and he lives off of his music. Mm-hmm. And the guy was like, no, that's not enough. I was like, well, he lives off his music. He's happy. He has a fan base, and he does music for a living. Like, what the hell is to me, that's kind of a success. It depends though. Like it's totally variable. If the only way you'll be happy is if you're number one in something, and you're probably gonna die a very sad man. But just because it's like you can only be a few people at that upper tier. But it's a good point. Like
and that upper tier, that's an ephemeral thing. So if you think of every band that's ever been number one. Maybe Nine Inch Nails had that at one point. Maybe Tool had it at one point. 30 Seconds to Mars, Kanye, whoever it is, they might hit number one at some point, but no one ever stays at number one forever. Yeah. That's a variable position. So you have to be at peace with wherever you naturally kind of gravitate in that spectrum. And if you aren't, I mean, there's no way I can sustain doing this every day if I was unhappy with that, where I'm landing. And of course, everyone would want to be more successful. Yeah, but of course, that's the battle we're all in. We keep striving to be better, and maybe it'll happen bigger if we keep trying. So
I think for me, the criteria for success is, I mean, obviously I have all this other stuff going on. There's a YouTube channel, there's courses, there's sample pack businesses and stuff. But for me, the music itself, if the music itself, if I didn't invest in marketing when I dropped a song, for me, success would be I could just release music and it would do reasonably well on its own. And then all the promotion I do is just icing on the cake. You know, and I've seen with like if you just drop a song, it does well. And obviously well is a relative term, but like that's kind of, for me, I think that would be the first big win. It's like I can just drop music, I'm going to get messages about it. I'm going to see it do reasonably well, even if I didn't invest anything in marketing and put super big effort behind it. And I think the next level of success would be defined by like, is the music itself a profitable endeavor? Which is like, that's an entirely different thing because you have to factor in like, you know, the costs of marketing, the costs of making all the content, and then the overhead costs that a lot of us don't consider, like all the music gear and stuff too. But for me, it's like if those two things were checked off the list, that would be like, I don't think I would necessarily ever expect more. You know, I think a lot of artists mess it up too. Like they want to be Ed Sheeran or something, and that's a big goal. That's like asking to start a company that becomes the next Apple, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so having a realistic expectation or goal. And then once you hit that goal, you can always keep going up. And, you know, maybe you don't even need goals. You just do whatever feels natural, makes you happy doing it. And then that'll lead you to places, and then you'll eventually find natural goals that seem realistic. But
yeah. I hear your dogs.
Yeah, man, they're going nuts.
Nice. Yeah, my dogs almost went off earlier when you were chatting, and luckily they didn't. They just ran out of the room.
Yeah, it's always a high risk over here.
Yeah. So what's on the horizon for you? Like, what's the next big thing for the Anix?
It's finishing this current album, which is done. I just have to finalize about 5 songs. I've got about 5 different, outside of the album, 5 different collaborations I'm doing with other artists.
Wow.
That'll just be released as singles. I need to do another video. And then we rebought the rights to one of my old albums from 2008, and we're going to remaster and kind of revamp a few of the singles on there to make them feel more current. So that's kind of the rest of this year. That's the plan as far as music goes. More merchandise, possibly bringing on a manager to help with various things. There's some talk about touring next year.
Yeah.
And
so you don't even have a manager, actually. That's an interesting point. I see a lot of artists like trying to rush getting a manager, and like they'll have like 100 monthly listeners on Spotify, and they'll be like, I need a manager to help me grow. But what are your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously there's a place for them, but it seems like for you, the idea is you would get a manager because you need, I guess in reality, a manager is more like your employee, like, right?
Yeah. I think if you're just starting and you don't have a label, you're just totally independent, and you brought in a manager to kind of manage submitting your music to the DSPs and pitching playlists, and he's going to try to get you PR and that kind of stuff, I would say it's a good idea.
Okay.
But for me, the label takes care of that. And all the other stuff, like the production work I do, the remixes, that's all just organic stuff that comes in. Like, I'm not out there hustling to get that stuff. I don't promote that I do it. It's just something, it's just DMs that come in or something like that. So that's definitely a side of the business I could grow if I had a manager that was pushing me as a producer, a writer, remixer. I'm sure I could do, tenfold of what I'm doing now. But then at the sacrifice of putting the Anix original music on the back burner. So right now the focus is still me producing original new songs at least one single per month. And if I ever get caught up and I knock all those out and I have 5 months of time, then maybe I can dive into the other stuff harder.
So it sounds like everyone, if you want to have Brandon remix your music, just blow up his inbox. But
yeah,
you've admitted that you work with anyone regardless of size, and that you take remix requests by DMs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't take all of them. It does definitely depend on how much work I have, and then sometimes I'll self-destruct, like when I take on too much stuff, and you have these meltdowns every once in a while where you're like, screw it all. I've had moments, man, where I'm just gonna sell everything, sell all my equipment, and just go out. Like, I'm just done with it. But I will say, over the last 2 to 3 years, it's been pretty stable as far as my like mental state being in the music industry. Before that, there was all these just massive ups and downs. It was always hard touring and then coming back to reality when you get home, getting a normal job, having to do everything on your own, and just being like a nobody. Because when you're on tour, you at least feel like you're in the cause, and you're working towards a goal. And then once that's over, it's a real problem for a lot of musicians that tour. Is they call it like landing. When you get back home, and you have to land back into reality.
Yeah,
it's a huge challenge, and there's like depression and all this, crazy stuff that goes on. I think Bono from U2, he even has a landing house. So when he gets home from tour, before he goes back into his house, he has this separate back house where he goes in for a few days just to kind of adjust to reality.
Yeah.
So
I never thought about that before, but like that seems so logical when you think about it. Like when you're on tour, you have X amount of thousands of people like watching you and cheering you on and being pumped, and like you're backstage, and so you're kind of special and isolated from the crowd. And so I feel like if you're on tour, you're kind of like being treated like you're special for the whole thing. And then you come home and you're just Brandon.
Yeah, it's dark.
I feel like that's like a huge shell shock for me for a longer tour. If you did it for like a week or something, I'm sure it's fine. But I can imagine if you did that for like an extended period of time, you come home and it's just kind of like if your head's not on like perfectly straight, you might kind of get depressed.
Oh, totally. Yeah, and when you're on tour, usually you'll have a tour manager, and depending on the size of the tour, but like good, professional tours, pretty much everything's done for you. Your only job is to wake up and be on stage to sound check at a certain time, and then be on stage to play. Everything else in between that, it's just your lunches, your food is all made. You don't have to drive anywhere. Little responsibility. So that's not reality. That's not how life works.
Unfortunately.
When you get used to that, coming home from that is hard.
Yeah. I know. Imagine if every day you woke up and all you had to do was just like, I don't know, like show up in your couch or something, and then like everyone would bring you food. And and you only had to work for an hour a day on stage, or whatever.
Yeah. And then everyone loves you. They're screaming. And then imagine you do that for a few months, and then you come home and now you're begging to get a job at, some dead end thing, and nobody knows who you are. No one cares. They see you as a failure because they haven't heard of your band name.
Right.
So that's a very stark contrast. So for me, it's not touring has been probably the best mental thing, because you don't have that massive roller coaster to deal with. Yeah.
People's expectations are, you mentioned people like, oh, I haven't heard of your band, and it's weird, but I mean, it's like you're kind of like you're doing pretty damn good too. So it's like if someone did that to you now, it'd be like, it's like silly, but I can imagine how it still probably kind of hurts your feelings a little bit when you get that reaction, like, oh, what do you do for a living? And you're like, oh, I'm a musician, and someone might be like, oh,
Yeah. The general reaction is, oh, have I heard any of your songs? And I was like, no, I'm sure you haven't. It's all it's pretty obscure. No one knows it. I really, when people ask, I don't even tell them the name. I just keep the whole thing a secret for the most part.
Yeah. Because it's a weird thing, you know, is people's expectations are so weird. Whereas like, it's not the same thing where if you're like, oh, what do you do for a living? And they say like engineer, you're not like, oh, have I heard of your company? And then they're not like, they're not like ashamed to answer the question. You know, it's not, it's like, it's the same, like it's the end of the day doing music. It's just another, I mean, obviously it's art and it's creativity, but at the end of the day, it's also like a career path. But it gets treated so much differently. And I'm sure the artist folk feel the same way if they're like a professional artist in some way.
Yeah. It's, you know, I think at the end of the day, everyone just wants to be authentically who they are. You don't want to have to, you know, if you feel like you are truly a musician, an artist, painter, whatever it is, nobody wants to go and meet people and say, yeah, I work at McDonald's. Yeah, I flip burgers for a living. They want to be able to say, I'm an artist. They want to be able to dress how they want to dress. And that's always been the worst part is basically wearing this disguise that you're someone else because you can't let everyone know you're an artist or you're whatever. And I think that's always just been the goal for me is breaking past that point and just being exactly who I am. And that's my life is just no apologies. This is who I am. This is what I do. And that's it. Not having to cover it up or wear a disguise or lie.
Yeah. On that note, that made me think about something. So like you have this whole aesthetic, you know, like how you dress and everything. It sounds like for you, that's just how you dressed as like a, I guess, normal person. And you just translate it to your music. And I'm sure there's a little bit that's like dramatic, like it was made a little bit more emphasized for the purpose of like content. But someone commented on one of my videos like a few weeks ago, and they were like, Andrew, you need to hire a stylist. You're being held back because like the way you dress is boring, the way you look is boring, there's nothing that stands out about it. And at first I was kind of a little bit like, screw you, guy. But then I like he was genuinely very nice about it. And I was like, he's kind of right. Like, I mean, I just kind of like what I do is my approach has always been like, I'm just going to act like how I act personally. You know? And he wasn't talking about my YouTube stuff. He's talking about specifically like my music content, which and the way I present myself with my music. He was saying like but for me it was always like I just always just be myself. So whatever clothes I would normally wear, I mean I might like pick a different shirt. I'm not going to wear like a Mickey Mouse shirt in a music video or something, or in like a picture that's kind of made to be more like for the music thing. But it made me think about like if I was going to pick like a style for like looks and what I wear and stuff, it's like, is it better to embrace the fact that people want to see something that's unique and that'll make you stick in their mind more? Or is it better to be authentic to yourself? Because for me, like this is how I am all the time. I'm just a guy with a nerdy guy with glasses who wears a lot of his own smiley shirts in orange. And I wear a lot of Disney shirts too. So it's kind of like, do I just stick to being authentic, or do I try to develop like some kind of memorable aesthetic behind how I look?
For me, it's the authentic route is definitely the way. Just because I can always tell if somebody's been dressed by a stylist or if they're wearing their friend's clothes that's just, I can see right through it. But I don't know if everyone has that or can see that way. Yeah. But there's a room for all kinds of looks. You don't have to just wear futuristic black stuff like I do. Yeah. You could do anything. Like I always thought a cool look for my music would be the opposite of what you would expect. So my music's pretty futuristic, kind of dark. So everyone expects the look to fit that. But I always thought it'd be cool just to go like in a full grunge route, like Kurt Cobain, just wear flannel, torn up jeans, because I like the imbalance. And I like that a lot in a lot of things. And I try to capture that in a lot of stuff I do is an imbalance. So if everything's too one directional, it's just, everything needs contrast, like a yin and yang, black and white. There's no beauty without ugly. There's no perfection without imperfection. And I think that works for a look, it works for a song, everything. That can be applied to everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So it just sounds like, maybe the answer for me is try to figure out something that's more unique, but is still authentic, which I guess is the complicated part.
Yeah. That I'll have to, after this, I'll have to dive into all your photos and see how you release, and just to take another look.
Yeah, man. I mean, like I'm down to hear any opinion you have. You've been around the ringer a lot more than I have. You have a lot more experience in this, so feel free to rip me to shreds. I won't take it the wrong way.
But I mean, another part is I absolutely love clothes.
Yeah.
So it just fits for me to have that be a big part of it. Just because I always loved characters growing up, like Marvel characters, DC, G.I. Joes, Army, military. I loved how all that stuff looked. Yeah. And at one point I was like, you can't wear this stuff if you're going to work at a bank every day, but you can get away with it if you're a musician or an artist. So that that was like one way to live that fantasy, is just bring it into the artistic realm.
Right. Yeah. So a completely unrelated question. How do you feel about the last two 30 Seconds to Mars albums?
Really, the only one I really liked was the very first one.
That's my favorite one. I love that album. When I first heard your song Hideaway, which was the first song I heard by you, the first thing I thought of was the first 30 Seconds to Mars album, which is one of my favorite albums like ever.
Yeah.
And I love their second one, and I like the third one, and the last two I've just been angry at Jared Leto.
Yeah, honestly, he's doing his own thing, whatever, but I can't look at any of it. I can't listen. I don't really listen to a lot of music in general, but I have no desire to really dive into it. I liked I liked the first album because it felt like he didn't really know how to do things perfectly yet. So you could tell he was figuring things out. There's a lot of experimental things. The songs weren't perfectly done, but that's what made it all cool to me. Yeah. Then it's like on record 2, 3, and 4, you could tell he learned new singing techniques, and he just got more cocky, and he knew what he was and how good he looked and all this stuff. They became huge, and I felt like that just showed through on the music. Yeah. And the songs became a little more just generic, and it just lost it for me. Nice. But clearly, I mean, my perspective doesn't matter because they have, millions and millions of fans. So it's working on some front. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think if an artist there's a million reasons for an artist to change styles. Like maybe he genuinely was bored of that. I mean, every album he does is completely different, and he's making money with it, and people like it. Yeah. So it's like, can't really judge him for it, but it makes me sad every time I see a new release by them, because I'm like, you had like this one album that was like one of my favorite things ever, and then you just never did anything close to it again.
Yeah.
It was just a little heartbreaking.
Yeah. I mean, he's a phenomenal vocalist. There's no denying that. And I love the drumming his brother does.
Yeah.
But I wish they could have stayed in that darker place with the first album.
Yeah. So like, what kind of artist, if someone were to ask you, like, describe what your music is like, how would you describe it? Would you reference like a few artists, or would you reference this kind of like futuristic kind of electronic rock?
I feel like the term electronic rock, in my opinion, has a bad vibe. So I try to stay away from that, just because there's a lot of that out there that just sounds too programmed and too perfect. Yeah. Most of my inspiration comes from like the 90s grunge era, when things were very imperfect and just messy and kind of reckless. So that's the core of everything I do, is this like grunge, like backbone basically. But also in that same time frame, I also love like The Cure, Depeche Mode, New Order, Phil Collins, Genesis, The Cars. A lot of those bands that were combining rock and electronic. So it's just combining those two worlds. The alternative rock side, where it's like big fuzzed out guitars, big choruses, but on the verses of my songs, I try to capture the electronic stuff. And then that we have this kind of constricted electronic section in the verse, then the chorus just blows up into this big like alt rock, thing. There's no real easy way to describe it. And that's always been a challenging part, is I don't have a consistent music style. It's always ranging from pure electronic to more pure alternative rock, or the combination of the two. And for a lot of fans, they just want one thing. They're either into metal and that's it, or into rock and they hate electronic. So fusing those two things, it's a very specific person that is open-minded to that.
One of my side projects, it's a band called Murder Night. It's me and a friend of mine. It's a combination of dubstep and metal. So he makes these like really banging like dubstep tracks, but they're also like, they have 8-string guitars in them. So they're like this kind of fusion of like metal and dubstep. And then I had these like a mixture of like screaming vocals and melodic vocals. So the idea is with that, it's like dubstep and metal. Sometimes it's super heavy, like just big breakdowns. I mean, dubstep breakdowns with big, thick, like layered screaming. And then we always want to have like catchy choruses. So it's this weird hybrid thing, right? Like it's super niche. And surprisingly, it does quite well when we advertise it. Because it's like, I was really concerned when we dropped our first couple of tracks. I was like, who's going to like this? Like how, or not necessarily who's going to like this, how are we going to find the people that are going to like this? Because people like, there's always an audience for, no matter what weirdo genre you're doing, like there's people for it. It's just a matter of finding them. And like at least in the Facebook ad land, we just targeted people who like dubstep and metal, and that just worked. Or we did dubstep narrowed by metalcore, so they had to like both of those things. And I can imagine for you have a similar thing, right? You're doing this kind of, it's like you're doing rock music, but there's electronic stuff in it, and some people that like rock might hate electronic music, and you're doing this electronic thing, and people that like electronic might hate rock, and
the problem is the term electronic is such a broad spectrum. So that could mean like pure Berlin techno music. It could mean house music. It could be, pop music. I mean, it's a massive term. So that's something we always struggle with, even at the label, is when we're pitching to playlists. How do we classify it? And usually it gets on like the big rock playlists. That's where we've had the success. We don't have the success when we try to pitch it to electronic playlists, because I think we're just selecting the wrong subgenres. And honestly, I don't know.
I don't know what it would be either. Like, I feel like the closest would be like a synthwave, but it's totally not synthwave either. So just because you got like the kind of drum loops, just the way the drums sound, like the kind of analog drum things you have in some of your songs. Like I think of synthwave, but even that, it's not really that close, and I feel like it wouldn't fit on a playlist of synthwave.
It's hard, man. And then the only bands that because I don't, like I was saying, I don't really listen to music a lot, but I mean, like Muse, they're a band that combines a similar kind of rock with electronics. 30 Seconds to Mars, the Smashing Pumpkins, Nine Inch Nails. So unfortunately, the only references I have are these massive epic bands. And just trying to see how they tag things and go from there.